Hi, thank you so much for watching the Louie File. Today we have a special guest.
Hey.
The one and the only Tracey Lewis is here with us today. The last couple of videos I have been in 1 Timothy chapter 2, and we've been discussing women, the aspect of male, female, the whole role of women here, and what Paul is telling Timothy to do with the women in his congregation and how he might instruct him about this. So we were in 1 Timothy 2, 9 through 15. Like I said, I made 2 videos already, but I was by myself. And, you know, when you start talking about male-female things, especially these roles, especially in our day and age, when people don't even know what gender they are, and they want to be something that they're just not. You start talking about the roles of these men and women, you're sure to get somebody's hackles up. Yeah. So what I've got here is a safeguard. I have brought in the feminine aspect of this because I want you to see and know this isn't a male chauvinistic thing. This is what the Bible is saying, and to have a female's perspective I thought was important, so that's what we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read these verses again, and then we're going to see what Tracey's take on this is. Okay. So 1 Timothy 2, starting in verse 9, he says, "Likewise, I want women to adorn themselves with proper clothing, modestly and discreetly, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly garments, but rather by means of good works, as is proper for women making a claim to godliness. A woman must quietly receive instruction with entire submissiveness. But I do not allow a woman to teach or exercise authority over a man, but to remain quiet. For it was Adam who was first created, and then Eve. And it was not Adam who was deceived, but the woman being deceived fell into transgression. But women will be preserved through the bearing of children if they continue in faith and love and sanctity with self-restraint."
All right.
Wow. That, I'm sure, sounds very foreign to some ears because we live in a world that's trying to make men and women equal, one and the same, and they are equal in one sense, but we, according to the scriptures, according to God, our Creator, we have different roles to play. So what would you say, first of all, about the adornment of women?
Well, I think really what it's trying to say is, it says, "I want women to adorn themselves with proper clothing, modest and discreet, not with braided hair, and of gold and pearls or costly garments." So I think that when a woman depends on those things to bring her identity or her beauty, and that she's depending on those things, I think that those things are not what matters. Because I think that it does matter.
Well, I mean, because in verse 10 he does go on to say, But rather
good works in as
is proper for women making a claim to godliness. So I think I addressed this on a previous video when Tracey wasn't here, but godliness is not in your apparel,
right?
In your outward adornment. It's an inner.
Kind of reminds me of when a woman or a lady has to go around telling that she's a lady, when you can obviously see that she's a lady. So you wouldn't have to keep saying, "I'm a lady."
Yeah.
Right? So because you're trying to put your identity in something that is...
You're trying to prove something a little too hard.
Yeah.
Trying to prove it when you shouldn't need to prove it.
Yeah, and I think women in general, I mean, they're... and I can speak for myself, I mean, I care about how I look and how other people perceive me when they see me. So I want to be in the latest trend or, you know, something cute. You know, and so, but to put all of that in who God says you are, I don't think that's
well,
right.
it's going away.
Yeah.
Eventually, the hair, the looks, the clothing, the body weight, the shape, all of these things eventually are doomed to go away.
Yeah.
The physical sense is always going to go away. It's decaying.
Yeah.
So we're, you know, it sort of reminds me of what Paul says. Actually, I think it is in Timothy. Yeah, 1 Timothy 4, verse 8. it says bodily discipline is only of little profit, but godliness is profitable for all things, since it holds the promise for the present life and also for the life to come.
Right.
So he's not saying don't care for yourself, don't be fit and diet properly or whatever, but he's saying that is temporary.
Right.
No matter how great you are, how great your blood is, and your muscle tone, and your hair, and your eyesight, and all those things, they're all destined to perish.
Yeah.
But the inner person, the inner woman or inner man, is going to go on.
Right.
So then he goes straight for the jugular here in 1 Timothy 2:11. He says, a woman must quietly receive instruction with entire submissiveness.
All right, well, the thing that comes to me about that, and
yikes.
Well, I think, when you and I got remarried, there was since you had just got born again, it was really kind of I've been born again longer than you, so how can you teach me something? And I think that was a struggle at the beginning, and then the Lord started speaking to you through the Word, and you were coming to me and explaining it, and I was like, I've been saved a long time and I've never heard that. So why is it that you know this and I don't? And so there really was a time of, I'd say, submissiveness, and maybe a attitude of being molded, pliable, teachable.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and I think it's a form of respect as well from the woman to the man, in that area.
Well, and I brought this up on a previous video, but I wonder, if there was a specific problem in this church. I look back at the Corinthian letter, Paul tells the women, that they should be quiet in church or during the services or whatever. And I've always taken that to mean that it was disruptive, not necessarily a male-female thing, because men shouldn't be disruptive either.
Right.
But it was maybe that particular environment, the women were like, I don't understand, and asking questions and kind of getting off on other subject matters maybe. We both witnessed this.
Yeah, squirrel.
Ministering or teaching the word with men and women, or men and women separated. The responses are very different.
They are. And girls are more chattier, I think.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah. So they're easier to be drawn off the path, I think, sometimes. Mm-hmm. So, Paul told the Corinthians, if a woman has a question or something, to ask their husbands at home.
Right.
And I think, so he's not saying that women shouldn't be taught or can't be taught or shouldn't be taught. Or I probably said that again twice. But see, men are redundant. No. The point being is that Paul is not anti-woman here. He's just saying that there are certain ways that we're made.
Yeah.
And we have a friend of ours that is a female teacher, great teacher of the Word, and she has said the same thing, that she would almost rather teach men. Mm-hmm. She said because men are a little bit better about staying on topic and following through with what we're dealing with. And women get more distracted, and they're more
spaghetti-like.
They're more into. They're more into lots of. They're attracted and deal with things just differently. We're just made different, that is something right there that people don't want to hear. Mm-hmm. That we're all even, we're all equal, we're all built the same, and that's just not true. We do not have the same purposes. I was bringing up in a previous video on this same topic about how men can't have children.
Really?
Isn't that something? Now, it's not that I would want the pain anyway, but is it not a privilege for a woman to be able to bring a child into this world?
Sure, absolutely.
But she has to have the man for the seed in order to. So God, He's got this set up in a perfect way because, well, it was that woman you gave me.
Yeah.
Well, but you were the one that knew better and you did it anyway. So there's this back and forth, and we can point at each other and we can have the battle of the sexes.
Well, it works better the way God has it set up. It just does.
And we both have to embrace that, men and women. And in Ephesians, I'd like to bring this up real quick. In Ephesians 5, there's a verse. Now, there's the section in Ephesians 5 about men and women, husbands and wives. But the verse right before it, Ephesians 5:21, it tells us, be subject to one another. And then it goes on saying the wives should subject to their husbands. But there's this previous statement, be subject to one another. So there is a give and take in this.
Yeah.
it would be silly of me and arrogant of me to think that I could never ask you your thoughts or opinion on something, and that
Right.
you could never be right,
Yeah.
or that
Yeah.
you would never have the correct response,
Right.
and that I'm not listening to you ever. You be quiet, and
Yeah.
I mean that would be silly.
And it would only last for a little while.
Well, it would be silly, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So that can't. Paul's not saying women are not as smart as men.
True.
That can't be what he's.
No.
I don't see how he could be saying that. I've learned from women teachers,
Yeah.
Bible teachers.
Yeah.
So there's one other thing I want to bring up about this before we move on, and that is Timothy was a young pastor, and this was a young church, and the Apostle Paul was sort of his spiritual father, I guess,
Yeah.
and he was telling Timothy how to structure, organize, discipline, carry out what the church needed to do.
Right.
The next chapter coming up in chapter 1 Timothy 2 or 1 Timothy 3, he starts talking about overseers and deacons and how they had to be a husband of one wife, not given to too much wine, the wives of deacons, all these different rules. Now, the New Testament is not law-based in terms of like the law of Moses, but it seems like we could turn these things, these suggestions and these rules, if you will, that Paul gives into laws themselves.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's exactly what he's wanting us to
Right.
do. As a young believer, a young pastor, a young church, there needs to be structure. Now, it doesn't mean that structure, there should always be structure. Don't misunderstand me. But we don't live according to bylaws. We live according to the Spirit.
Right. Yeah.
So in this day and age, where in the way we live, the culture we live in, it may not look exactly like this.
Right.
These are great outlines. These are great structures, foundations. But ultimately, the expression of the Spirit in the life of you and the life of the church has to be the expression of the Spirit in the life of you and the life of the church you're involved in. It can't just mimic and copy.
Right.
So I think some of that has to be taken into account here
Absolutely.
too.
Yes.
So then he says, verse 12, 1 Timothy 2:12, but I do not allow a woman to teach or exercise authority over a man, but to remain quiet. Then and we sort of already kind of addressed that in a way about being teachable and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So verse 13 says, for it was Adam who was first created and then Eve. And it wasn't Adam that was deceived, but Eve was deceived.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
I think, I think because the woman is made to be a nurturer, right? And she's kind of the buffer a lot of times when, the dad is, I said no, and but the woman, but the lady, the mom, she's like, oh, well, honey, daddy really loves you. So it's kind of that, I don't know, I think women are kind of just made to be that toward that way. It's not.
Do you think that, and I don't want this to come across wrong, but do you think that when a man is told something, do this, and you do it this way, and you do it this way, and that's the way you do it? Like a military, a guy would tell a soldier, you go and do this.
Yeah.
And this is, don't go this way, but go this way, and you take this many steps, and you carry this with you, and and all the direct.
Yeah.
But then, sometimes I think, and I mean, please be merciful to me. Sometimes I think women are a little more emotionally driven,
There you go.
and men are more directives.
Yeah.
It's like give them the plan, give them the goal, give them the purpose, and just let me carry it out.
Right.
Aye, sir.
Sure.
And a little bit more, for lack of a better word, by the book.
Yeah. Okay.
Now with Adam, of course, he knew the rule and he was
Right.
told the thing, but he went ahead and did it anyway. So I don't know which one's worse, to
Yeah.
be deceived into sin or to
Right.
just walk into it openly.
Yeah. Yeah, to be tricked or.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that one could be worse than the
Because
other.
there was a question in the garden. Did God really say? And then the one was like,
You start rationalizing.
Yeah. So I think you're onto something with the emotionally driven aspect
I
of
think,
it. Because I think women are to cry easier, maybe sympathetic crying, or even just.
Well, and it's not to say that men can't be led astray at all, because I mean, we
Right.
all obviously can. But I mean, maybe we're trying to divide or pick something apart here that doesn't need to be picked apart. But in the book of Proverbs, I think it's chapter 7, it talks about a foolish young man that was going by the house of this harlot,
Right.
which is basically a picture of the wisdom of the world, the mind of the flesh, if you will. And so he got enticed because this woman gave him all these rational reasons as to why it was a good idea. So I guess men and women in that sense can both be,
Right.
lied to, deceived, encouraged in the wrong direction. So the serpent says to Eve, "Oh, really? This looks good. Look at that. Look how shiny." And the woman in Proverbs 7 did the same thing to the foolish young man. So
See, isn't this really just going back to in verse making a claim to godliness? So this is about godliness,
the
right?
goal, yeah.
Yeah. So, did we go to the next one where women?
Well, no, verse 14 is where we read a
Okay.
minute ago, just about the woman being deceived and Adam wasn't, but they both are equally guilty in my mind.
Well, I was just thinking about when we go to the prison and I stand up before the men and I have my Bible, which is the authority of Christ, right? And I'm reading the word, so is that putting me in authority over men? Or is this something that, and I never feel like I'm teaching them anything, I kind of feel like I'm just reminding them. And it's the one thing that we both have in common.
Yeah.
And so would that mean that by being a woman that I wouldn't be able to read the word to a group of men?
Yeah, I think false prophets come in any gender.
Yeah.
I mean, so we have to be careful no matter what, and that's the beauty of having the Holy Spirit and having a copy of the Bible for ourselves.
Yeah, that's good.
There is, if you flip back in just one page, really for me, 1 Thessalonians 5. I think to me this is always a good verse, a good key. 1 Thessalonians 5:21. I think sort of addresses this in a way. 1 Thessalonians 5:21. It says, "But examine everything carefully.
Okay.
Hold fast to that which is good." And then verse 22, "Abstain from every form of evil."
Okay.
So we have to have discernment.
Yeah.
We have to, what does it say? Examine everything carefully.
Yeah.
And hold to that which is good. Sometimes people say, you chew it all up and you spit out the bones.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that has to be the same with whether it's a man or a woman. I don't know that a man or a woman, back in this day, I've heard told that a woman wouldn't even be called to be a witness.
Yeah.
Like a woman was a second-class citizen. They were not. Their testimony wouldn't be allowed.
Yeah.
The Hebrew people broke down into males. The males went to synagogue. The women, I don't even think they did. I think the women were not taught officially.
Right.
So you got to think about that.
Right.
However you view it, in our day and age, women are given opportunities they were not given historically.
Right.
So
take that into consideration.
Yeah, they have PhDs, they have degrees, they have the education. Some of them way more educated than me, in that sense.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it comes back to the gifting of the Spirit, I think.
All right. So
then finally, 1 Timothy 2:15, it says, "But women will be preserved through the bearing of children if they continue in faith and love and sanctity with self-restraint." Will be preserved through the bearing of children.
Faith, love, and the same was life.
Faith, hope, and love.
Yeah.
Well, what is this meaning here? Is this preserved through the bearing of children? In the garden, whenever the curse was handed out, God told Eve that through suffering or whatever she would bear children.
Yeah.
But that she wasn't going to die from it.
Right.
And you think about giving birth, it's probably as closest to death as you would ever get. One of the closest to death that a woman gets is actually bringing forth life. So there's a dying aspect to bringing forth life, but then on top of that, is it being preserved, meaning that your lineage, I'm not sure what he's saying here.
Yeah.
Women will be preserved through the bearing of children. So their influence, maybe through the child rearing and mothering aspect, your influence will carry on. In other words, you're submissive and quiet when it comes to teaching men, but through your children, you will be preserved, and your wisdom and your teaching, if you will, would be handed. I don't know. I've never really thought much about that. But if you have children, a mom, one of the things that moms do is teach their children.
Yeah. Well, it says saved.
Saved.
You'd be saved.
So, I mean, and that brings up another issue. You know, do we not want mothers who are women teaching our boy children? That's silly.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's silly. So, no, anyway, there's a lot to be thought about here, and I thank you for joining us. I really like this idea of having the male-female aspect here.
Yeah.
Maybe we're going to do more of this, hopefully, in the future. But there you have it. We've sufficiently beat this thing in 3 videos, 2 with me and 1 with Tracey and I both. So that's going to be it for that. We're going to move on into chapter 3 in the next video, and we hope to see you there. Thank you for watching.
See ya.